into the nitty-gritty behind monsters from different lore. However, there is a general focus on D&D.
We are players and DMs, so we draw from our experience with different tabletop RPGs, and we tend to go off on tangents every so often.
If you're looking for facts and historical value, this may not be the podcast for you. But if you love discussing monsters and all of their potential, just for fun, then we got you covered.
Adult content warning, and with all of that out of the way, my name is Dylan, and I'm joined once again by my two brave monster hunters.
I'm Alex.
And I'm Melina.
And this is Mornings with Monsters. Today we find ourselves climbing high up in the mountain pass, hunting a beast, terrorizing the locals, well, at least every few years. On the wings of red with spiraled horns and eyes of molten lava orbs, make a dex saving throw, because today we're taking on the one, the only, Red Dragon. The most iconic D&D monster, I would say. It's on, like, the book, it's on the DM screen, it's all over the place. But we'll also start this episode talking a little bit about dragons. We've been slightly wary about starting our adventure hunting these dragons because they're scary. Each dragon comes with several different variants. Obviously the classic ancient red dragon, and then each dragon kind of also has an adult dragon, young dragon, and dragon wormling stat block. They're different stages or stages of the life cycle, and we're just gonna kind of combine them all in one, since it's the same thing, and moving from its wormling state all the way up to its 1,000-year ancient status. It's also going to be very D&D heavy, I would say, when we're talking about this specific dragon type. There are many dragons in many different forms and different, forms of media that are red, but I think, at least I'm pretty sure we're specifically talking about your typical red dragon from D&D, because they're going to have, a lot of differences from just a dragon that's red in, say, Game of Thrones, or something like that. Because I'm pretty sure in Game of Thrones, it's like there's red, green, black, white, and they're all they've all got their own personalities, but they're not serving a specific god as far as I know, and going about their ways for specific reasons, just kind of more personal. Am I on the right track, guys, or are we...
Yeah.
I think you got it.
Yeah, the only thing I wanted to say on the front end of this with the explanation is I was cruising through the different editions. I like to see if the stat blocks have changed much throughout the editions.
Sure.
In 3rd edition, for the stages, there is wormling, very young, juvenile, adult, young adult, mature adult, old, very old, ancient, worm, great worm. And I'm like, that is so many. And it's all, and then 1st edition and 2nd edition, it's just red dragon. One red dragon.
That's interesting. It's like, well, I know in 1st edition when you see a dragon, you really just literally roll a dice and there could be a dragon. So it almost makes sense that, like, the game's so much faster paced back then, so you didn't want to, like, kill your whole party by throwing just the red dragon stat block at them immediately. So having a bunch of options to kind of pull from. And I've never played it, but I've seen it played once or twice, and death comes quick in that game. You'll finish a whole campaign in one setting, or, not
especially
always.
If players aren't a high enough level.
Yeah. I mean, and the same kind of goes for 5th edition, I would say. There's several stat blocks for Red Dragon, and I'd say that's for a reason, because you want to fight dragons in Dungeons and Dragons, but the problem is most campaigns don't make it past level 10, and ancient red dragons are not a level 10 fight.
So difficult. Probably, what would you say? Level 15?
That's where I would start.
For an ancient
minimum?
dragon.
For
So
like
for
a red.
I'd say a party of 6 with magic weapons. That's pretty well balanced. Yeah, 15.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm like obviously not a singular player at level 15, but
No. Even a party of 4 at 15 would have quite
They
the
would
struggle, I
struggle.
feel. Yeah.
Hell yeah. I mean, the attacks could like his. I'm trying to look at his breath attack. It's 26 d6. That's 91 average damage, and if you were maxing it out, that's taking down a whole character.
But as we know from some of our research, red dragons are loath to use their breath
Yeah.
because
yeah,
they don't want to destroy possible additions to their horde.
Oh, absolutely.
it's true.
So I think before we deep dive into red dragons specifically, we'll give just a slight bit of like general dragon knowledge, I think, for our listeners who may not play Dungeons and Dragons. And I think this is interesting as a concept, like dragons in general, for people that don't play Dungeons and Dragons, because they're still super fucking cool. So there's two types of dragons. There's the metallic dragons and the chromatic dragons. Without getting into it too much, there's basically two dragon gods. One is Bahamut, which is good, and they all the metallic dragons kind of worship them. And then there's Tiamat, which I could be saying those wrong, which is
Nope.
bad, and those are the chromatic dragons that kind of worship them. And the ancient red dragon is a chromatic dragon, so not super fun. It's chaotic evil in its alignment. So, anything else you guys want to add about general dragons?
There's a lot of
I know there's so much stuff.
There's a lot.
well,
These
I think
dragons
it's-
can talk. That's a big one.
Oh yeah, all dragons can talk. Yep.
yeah. I think we see it like 50-50 in media, but for as far as D&D and talking to non D&D players, that's probably the one like shock I get is they're like, "Wait, dragons can talk?" I'm like,
Yeah, they're really intelligent in D&D.
most dragons I feel like can talk. They're the general public that's less into fantasy. Like we're all aware Game of Thrones brought in like this huge wave of non-fantasy nerds into
Nerd.
like nerddom. Yeah. So there's this whole subsection of people who got introduced to things like dragons in media through Game of Thrones, where dragons don't talk.
That's true.
So I feel like that is maybe why it's a clarification point, because we see it in a lot of other media that they do talk, or like
Mhm.
they at least have like the like they can talk in your brain kind of thing. Like
Yeah,
most
yeah.
of them aren't
psychic.
like, "Hi, I'm a dragon."
Yeah.
Like with their mouth, they're it's gonna be a mental link.
Yeah, and it is kind of split. I would say even in like Lord of the Rings, I believe some can talk and the older versions can't. But
That's yeah.
I don't know if that's 100% true.
But I
Dragons are
feel
weird
like a lot
and
of people, even who are nerdy, understand that like Lord of the Rings does sit a little bit in a subsection of the nerdiness because
it's its own pocket of
yeah,
lore and its entire world.
exactly. And I'm not, and that's we can say Game of Thrones obviously is
Yeah.
too, but it's less developed because
I was thinking about this right before
There
we
it is.
started, because like Game of Thrones is like Westeros, or whatever the name of the whole planet is really really old, and dragons they most likely predate most civilizations. So who knows what they used to be? Because even in
Right.
D&D, they started kind of the opposite, like the dragon. Well, it depends on where you find your source material for where dragons started, but I believe they came from before the enlightened gods or whatever started creating races that could understand things. There was like dragons on the realms that couldn't talk, and they were more like worms. before like the gods came into play and started giving sentience, and then it gets a little bit like, even in the lore, it's like we don't 100% know everything about how dragons became your modern day dragon.
I mean, if you look at the way that dragons kind of got bred out of Westeros, and how like over the generations they were just smaller and more pathetic, and then you think about how they were kept even at the like height of the Targaryen uh like reign.
Yeah,
They were still kept in small, for them, because they're dragons, small basically cages, a pit underneath the ground.
sure.
Like, what if before the fall of Valyria, before being enslaved by the Targaryens and the Valyrians, maybe they had their own culture. They did speak and they did create, and
Yeah,
it was through magic, or maybe through some like shitty Daenerys Targaryen type of like sacrifice magic
yeah,
that tied dragons to humans, like could have been anything. But it is weird to me to see that like such a huge part of a world, these dragons are so domesticated.
yeah. I would say there's probably residuals of some kind of culture. They
Mhm.
are super smart. They respond to Valyrian speech. So
Yep.
there's something there.
They definitely can understand at the very least. I definitely think we're looking at like a downfall of something.
I think so too.
Yeah.
It makes a lot of sense because there was a lot of stuff that the fall of Valyria did, and we don't really know, like we know the Doom came, and we've seen what the Doom does to like humans.
Yeah.
So
Well, and it's very possible, like, I think the Society of Dragons that existed in a sense of um actual communication, if anything, with the people if they were there. Like dragons probably had a hand in building Valyria.
that's what
Rather,
I was thinking.
yeah,
Yeah.
they probably there long before.
Like you hear it all the time that there are no smiths alive that can
Hmm.
make Valyrian steel. Well, I am always a believer that dragons have a hand in making Valyrian steel, and that's the reason
I
why
would
they're
say
so
so.
magical.
Yeah,
Like,
that actually
Make-
tracks. I've never thought about that, but that
but
makes a
it
lot
just
of
seems,
sense.
yeah, it just seems like the reason that they lost the smiths is because the dragons can no longer communicate. Like,
and also the reason they lost the access to Valerian steel is because there's no they don't realize that connection.
yeah, and why
And
would they? They think that dragons are basically beasts.
They're creatures of
Exactly.
war,
Yeah, yep.
rather
It
than
should-
intelligent.
Not that this is a Game of Thrones podcast, but
No,
It
we
could
are
be.
just all big fans.
I mean it is dragon heavy, so especially with this new season, no spoilers, of course. Obviously, I mean we've all seen it. But I think we kind of pressured Alex into watching it before it was all aired.
House
Just
of the
because-
Dragon. Yeah.
Yeah, all of the other party members had watched it, and it was like episode 3, and I think that's when you guys gave in and started watching it, and I was like, it's probably because we won't shut the fuck up about talking about it.
Yeah.
I mean,
Um,
I don't like care too much about spoilers, but at the same time, I hate like not being part of the conversation.
Sure.
I can
So,
understand. I'm like, stop talking about that. I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
like,
This-
I want
No,
to talk to you about this, damn it, but I have no knowledge to give.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to air way later than, the current time.
That's
is when
true,
we're
yeah.
recording this.
Well, still,
But
I mean,
I've been dodging spoilers left and right of God of War Ragnarok because like half of the people I work with are way further than me, and they're like,
My brother's
"Oh,
been,
get to this
like-
part."
My brother's been like texting me like every 4 hours when he comes out of his fucking like stupor in it. You know, he's like, this game. I'm like, shut up, dude.
It's so good. It is good. And it will probably have
Oh.
several DLCs by the time we eventually, air this. So we'll see.
what I was gonna say is, I feel that in the House of the Dragon we can see like the last remnants of like the um the dragon rider Targaryens, Valerians, like that have the respect and relationship that like Dany was trying to rebuild a little
Even then,
to an extent. Like you can see it in like Rhaenyra. You can see
yeah.
it in like her sons a little bit. The little shitheads that like we don't need
See,
to get
my mind went right to Daemon, not to the
Yeah.
Targaryen boys, because Daemon has no respect for his dragon or
Yeah.
the dragons on a whole, and it's weird, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of and I think that's one of the biggest disconnects I think that he has as a character
Hmm.
in the storyline altogether. And I mean, we see it with like when he figures out that Rhaenyra has information from Viserys that he didn't get to know, like, or he didn't know first. He fucking snaps. But
Spoilers.
I feel like it's a similar thing that he's just like, dragons are beneath me. If I give them any more power, then they could easily not be. So like I'm in charge here, kind of bullshit.
Well, to
Um,
pull this back to
Red Dragon.
Red Dragons just a little bit, um, the dragons forging Valyrian steel, you see a little bit of that same kind of concept in D&D. I don't know if it's one specific instance of this, but I know that there's at least one. Probably happens more. But the dwarves had actually kind of enslaved a dragon and use it to forge. So it's like half enslaved because they've captured it, and then they also half kind of pay tribute to them because it like uses its dragon fire to, forge and create things it wouldn't otherwise have been able to, because it's like magically imbued fire. So
Yeah,
it's straight elemental magic,
That's cool.
mixed with their internal dragon goo, whatever. Which, if you guys,
Goo.
if you guys are gonna, I say goo specifically because I found out that the way dragons work, at least in D&D, and they have whole like autonomy, like they have
Yeah.
an autonomy. Like there's reasons for everything. The breath attack is kind of not a great description because it's more like they're vomiting because the fire comes from like part of their stomach. So I always thought that was interesting. So
In most stories I've read where dragon's fire is like explained, they usually have like a fire bladder that has some kind of like sticky, flammable liquid that either gets mixed with the air or like another chemical that the dragon releases and
yeah.
catches fire like as it meets.
Yeah, I was starting to be. I was like looking at it, and I was looking at pictures of, a dragon's internal organs, and then I was like, you know what? Even if I try and memorize all this, it's not gonna come out right. So, I'm just gonna like
Genetic
it's so
Red
much. I'm gonna pick at the parts that were interesting. So I don't
Welcome
know.
to our fantasy medical podcast.
Yes, where each week we dissect a different dragon.
Okay, but that would be really cool.
That actually would be really
If we
awesome.
could legitimately, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. We need a medical, we'll explain how all of the things work and have like someone who knows nothing about fantasy but a lot about.
But so much medicine.
Yeah. They'll just be like, fire bladder, I don't know, but it's magic. And that's kind of like how the whole thing was. It's like it makes sense because of magic.
Yeah. I mean, and that's how half of the fantasy world works.
Yeah, but D&D does a pretty good job of not just explaining it away by saying, well, magic. I mean, some things for sure, but it's usually, well, the magic works this way, so.
Yeah. But I've definitely always seen not always seen. In my head, I see like a dragon's flame as more of like magma-esque type looking
Yeah.
secretion.
Well, there is a dragon, not in like the current meta of D&D, but an older dragon that did spew magma as well as fire, but it ended up getting like formed into a mountain and stuff.
That's cool.
And that's like D&D, like early editions, and that's in a realm where there are no Tiamat or Bahamut. So the dragons end up like the only time they ever work together is when this dragon wakes up. Because it's like it's a literal mountain and it breathes molten magma on everyone, which is scary.
Yeah, that is terrifying. Like, no
But I
thanks.
can also get that would make all the other dragons be like, all right, we're
Disgaea.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I mean the dragons did work together at the very beginning to put down some kind of evil force before they were separated, and that's how the two dragon gods got created, was by another god that made the dragon gods and decided, all the other dragons shouldn't be, elevated to god status, or they'll probably eat all of the other gods. So there's a lot of religion in the dragon lore.
especially with red dragons because they believe some really hilarious shit in comparison to what you just said.
Yeah.
They believe that the world was created by a prime dragon called Asgaroth, and then that after the world was created, they like Asgaroth created dragons, and that any dragon that isn't red lost their color through impurity
Wow.
and don't deserve to be at the pinnacle of dragonkind like the reds do, which is hilarious to me because further on in my research, they said that they will actually like avoid fights with gold dragons because they know that like they're stronger than them, but they won't admit it like that, like as a weakness. They'll find a reason for why it's not wise to fight the gold dragon this time.
Yeah, every time. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that wisdom comes from, and I personally don't think all red dragons are necessarily that wise to
No.
avoid those fights, because there's the orphaned reds, where they aren't given that guidance by their parents. So
Oh, I'm under the impression that all red dragons have no guidance from their parents.
I read like an article of ecology. I don't know if it was official D&D, but it said that the mother and dragon, after they mate, they actually have like a competition out of convenience for their kingdoms, to kind of try and get the mom dragon will tell the baby dragon all the things it wants it to know, so that it will make its life easier and maybe not invade its territory or go really far away, and then the dad will do the same thing, and then the baby will kind of like choose to stay in communication with one throughout its life, solely out of convenience for the rest of its life.
That's interesting.
Which is
so
there's conflicting conflicting reports on the early stages of a red dragon's life.
what I read. It's not, I mean, it's a little bit of even before that. So the female only they only mate every like century or so.
Yeah.
And they like pick the most wealthy of like high status red dragons. So
Mhm.
like they never fight it because they're like they take it as like an honor.
Yeah, even the males take it as like a reputation boost, right?
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. So she once she hatches her eggs,
Mm-hmm.
the male dragon like abandons her.
That's what I've heard too. Yeah.
Yeah. So they'll abandon her, and so she will like raise them to young adult stage of development. But sometimes even earlier than that, her natural instincts will kick over and she'll force them from her territory.
Yeah. So, red dragons, the greediest of dragons, most covetous.
Yep.
And the biggest of the metallic dragons, at least their wingspan.
You mean chromatic?
Chromatic.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Chromatic. There's a lot of weird words.
So many.
Excuse me, chromatic dragon.
Actually,
So I was trying to figure out, because like in D&D it says that dragons are what they are as far as alignment goes, but there's also, it's not impossible for a red dragon to be good, kind of. There's like,
Fact somewhere.
yeah, there's like a way to do it, but if you try and go, like if you raise a dragon from birth, first of all, it's born able to read, write, and understand magic. And then it also immediately becomes greedy enough to not let you steal the shell of its egg, because it will hoard it. It will be its first like thing that it adds to its dragon hoard. So I read that if you try and take a dragon at birth and make it good, but go about it the way you would like any other creature, it's going to backfire on you because it already has an understanding of so many things right when it's born. It was kind of unclear as to like how you would, raise it or influence it down the path of the best you're going to get is probably like neutral. I don't think you're going to get a good one, but maybe just not like a evil based alignment.
are we talking about specifically with Reds?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's there's tons of I bet the dragons fall under almost every alignment except for true neutral, but maybe. Yeah, I thought that was really funny because it's like I just imagine like a group of adventurers finding a red dragon egg that's on the verge of cracking, emerging from its molten nest. And then they're like, oh, this is our chance. It's a red dragon. We're going to try and make it good. And then it's immediately like, hey, fuck you. Stop stealing my egg shells. And then just like breathes fire on them. Like, and then
I saw someone's comment on YouTube said that one of their rangers in their party has a red egg and they have no idea what it is, but they're really excited to see it hatch.
Oh no. That's scary. And like, the requirements for hatching a red dragon egg are lethal to, humanoids. Like the levels of heat that it needs.
Yeah.
So I don't know how he's about to hatch that puppy. Also, I don't know how it works. Like if you have an egg that gets it isn't incubated in that molten like immediately, like does it hatch if you save it for 100 years and then put it on some hot coals or whatever?
Right. Yeah.
We're
That's
talking-
interesting.
Sure.
And Game of Thrones, maybe.
Yeah, and I always heard that those were magically hatched after the petrification,
I think so too. There was probably some kind of god-like intervention, or maybe there's a lost way of old Valyria, like the only way to hatch dormant dragon eggs is through sacrifice or something.
That's true. I mean, it might be why they gave them to them every time like one was like a Targaryen was born or whatever.
Sure.
Like the sacrifice of birth was enough to like hatch a dragon. But I also believe that like when Dany hatched her eggs, R'hllor needed to be on the planet again,
Sure.
and that the dragons are his like physical embodiment.
Yeah, because that's when the comet came, was at the exact same time, which is a stream of light that lingered for a very long time in the books. Because I'm reading them right
like
now.
a long time.
Like the entire book, at least one of the entire books, which each book is like over 30 hours because I'm listening to them right now. So that's a long
and,
time.
Doesn't it span like months in the book?
Yeah. Maybe
Yeah.
even like a full year.
It's a long time for a goddamn comet.
I know, right? So that's like, it's probably not a normal comet,
True.
Back in
The eye of a great red dragon.
right, heralding in the next age of dragons.
That'd be cool.
So, did you guys get to see the like rage of a red dragon?
A little bit.
Like the prime hunting time for humanoids to kill a red dragon is like when they're in competition with other neighboring red dragons.
Yeah.
It's so stupid.
Yeah. When they think that they've been out-wealthed.
Outperformed in like their veracity or something like that.
There's a
It's
lot
neat.
of peacocking in, Red Dragon
Red Dragon
society.
It,
Culture.
it almost reminds me of
Red
like
Dragon
when
culture
when I
toxic.
see like a hugely lifted, bright red, loud diesel truck with balls hanging from the tailgate, like
Yeah.
that's a red dragon to me. You know what I mean? Like, like could you run any car that you see over? Yeah, probably. Like, do you need to? No, but like, all right.
Hopefully you impress the female car.
There's
You're
like
no, or you're not getting
something
any.
about truck nuts that
Oh
just doesn't
God.
scream the like. I feel like red dragons are a little bit more elegant than truck nuts,
I don't
but
think so. I have to differ. Like, if it can like gain something from its posturing alone, like
Yeah.
it will. You know what I mean? And like in that is like the tactful mind, but it might not be glamorous, but it fucking does the job.
Yeah. I mean, they'll covet anything like that's worth any value.
Like
It's
very
if somebody sneaks in and steals like a tiny coin from their hoard and they slept in a town before they came to steal it, the dragon will just burn the town down. Like just for like making sure that that thief could sleep there.
yeah.
Well,
I also read that
that's
all
truck nuts for me.
that's truck nuts right there.
all right.
That's our next podcast tagline. There's the truck nuts again.
Dragons in their truck.
That's what I'm saying. Could you imagine just them like seeing them hang down as they fly away?
Oh
Like
God. Just like gilded truck nuts
this is fire country.
encrusted with jewels. Um, forged in 1,000-year dwarven smithy.
Those would smell bad.
You. So I read that dragons can forge magic items and use like magic items that are specifically for dragons, like tail bracers and things like that. Although the red dragon won't use those because it's like a sign of weakness, but some are known to use magic items that are basically like fields of anti-invisibility for their hordes, so
Cool.
to help them protect their hordes. But other than that, they don't they see that as weakness, and any sign of weakness is a huge problem in the red dragon culture. You don't
Yeah,
want
that's enough to like literally have another red dragon pounce on you, right?
Yeah, I mean, they will. If for any reason, other red dragons think you are showing sign of weakness, they will attack and kill you and claim your land.
Like
Which,
they will all attack and like they will all gather together. All the red dragons in the realms around you gather together and be like, "This bitch senile."
yeah, they're getting old. They can't hold their land. Let's all attack them. Oh, you didn't
And
do
Time
so
to
great
go.
in this fight, so we're all going to attack you now. You know,
Literally.
it's just like until one is left, and then the female.
It's almost like
has three more
when
babies.
we saw the harpies like
Yeah.
call. You know what I mean? Like
Uh-huh.
Like, when you can't, if you can't keep it, then you never deserved it.
yep.
It's their mindset.
All right. Well, we have climbed the mountain pass, and we're recording this as we're walking. By the way, there is a little cave here, and I think I see some light at the end of the tunnel. So we're gonna take a quick dip into this very ominous looking cave. Ooh, it's warm.
Very
And we'll be right back if we make it to the other side. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. Thank you so much for listening. Red Dragons, very fun to talk about. We learned a lot, and now we're terrified. I hope you guys are enjoying so far, and don't worry, I'll let you get right back into it. But if you want us to discuss a different kind of monster next week, or maybe a different kind of dragon, you can reach us at morningswmonsters@gmail.com. And as always, huge shout out to @MizenCake on Instagram. You can check out some cool stuff. They made our cover art. Super, super cool. Also, if you found us through one of our QR code stickers, that's thanks to at Olava's Cryptid Crafts. Super cool stuff. I hope you guys are enjoying. Don't forget to tell everybody you know, nerds or not, maybe soon to be nerds, family, friends, coworkers, enemies, anybody, about Mornings with Monsters, because it's super fun, and that's the best way for us to do our advertising. Well, I'll let you get back to the rest of the episode. Thank you so much, and you'll hear from me next week. We've come to the other side of the cavern, and I think I see the glimmer of gold. Oh, that's a red dragon sleeping. Back up. And while we sit here, let's talk a little bit about some red dragons. So I don't know if you guys saw the lifespan. I looked around for the lifespan of a red dragon, and I went down the rabbit hole a little bit. I saw it's like around 1,000 years, but almost all of them that aren't killed live way longer than that.
Yeah, I figure like it's either lost to memory or like not the red dragon's memory, but like human recording, or like the dragon dies. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I also saw that red dragons are so greedy that their like greed for even life itself to like live longer so they can keep hoarding. They will take they prefer vampirism, but they will also become Dracoliches just to keep going. But they prefer prefer vampirism so that they can maintain their personality.
So they'll like get bit by a vampire to turn into and then so like by that, do they have to drink
They
dragon
have to
blood?
drink dragon blood,
Wow.
which is fucking brutal and kind of
That's
tracks
so
for a
brutal.
red dragon, though.
Yeah, it does.
You
They
know?
would do that. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like I don't think many other dragons would, but the red would absolutely.
I would be so fucking scared to fight a vampiric ancient red dragon. And I mean, essentially, you are always fighting an ancient red dragon if it's a vampire, because there's no need for it to take on vampirism if they're not
it's
at
young.
the end of their lifespan, yeah.
Yeah.
If it ain't old.
So I thought that was interesting. And like the article I read, like wrote it so well, it was like 1,000 years, ha, that's not nearly long enough for my greed. Like, I'll take vampirism, like something like that. I was like, oh,
That's legit.
that's awesome.
I think my most favorite fact I found was their meat. Like if you're to consume red dragon meat, like either don't, like literally don't, or you need to get it prepared like very specially because it's like so spicy it will fuck your whole body up.
I want to try it.
Me too. So bad.
Probably most dragon meat, though.
Hmm?
I feel like that's probably most dragon meat, though.
Yeah, I mean, all dragon meat does weird things to you, but I think
Yeah.
specifically the red dragon is super spicy.
Like so spicy it makes your body cramp and stuff.
Picante.
Muy muy.
Yeah, no, that would be something to try. I think it recommended a jerky
That sounds so good actually.
to cure it and take
Yeah.
down the spice level. Red dragon jerky would probably be very, very expensive, although I don't know.
I feel like I would
I
I would age it until it becomes like only like a mild medium. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? In comparison to what it was, and then I would just like pack it with before trimming it with like berries.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like bring the sweetness level into it before I cut it into jerky. I think that would be bomb.
We can't spend all day talking about dragon meat recipes because I'm just gonna get real
I
sad
would too.
that we can
Yeah.
never do it.
We'll never have it.
We'll never have it. I also found out that there's some justification for dragons sleeping for so long without eating, because I'm always thinking about like that, like how do they sleep for years or decades at a time without eating? And apparently some like reptiles, and dragons aren't technically reptiles, but in real life they can go months or seasons without
Yeah.
eating, and I
Yeah,
thought that was really interesting.
they call it brumation.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
And
figured
like
you'd know a little bit more than I would about this, so I was interested
It's
to
like-
bring it up.
it's like a smaller form of hibernation, and I don't know if they gorge themselves beforehand or not, or if they just like, because reptiles are weird, man. They're
Yeah.
not like mammals, you
No.
know, like they can do things that are, I don't know. I've seen my snake eat two mice in a row within like minutes of each other, and like the time it takes a 16-inch long, like half an inch wide tube to get like a fucking mouse twice that wide down its belly and near its butthole, ready for the second one. It's like, I don't really get it, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I only feed him once a week.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, that's normal. Like, he's not hungry until like day 5, and then I stretch it out just to make sure he doesn't get overfed. But
Yeah. I also saw with dragons, they like some of them don't even need to eat if they're near a source of the magical elemental powers that feed them. So like for a dragon, if you're living on a magic volcano, you don't have to eat.
that's
But
dope.
they do anyway because they just like having a feast every
Yeah,
every
they have
once in a while,
flavor.
right? So now I want to talk about my most favorite thing I've ever read about Dungeons and Dragons. It brought everything kind of full circle as I
Your
was
most favorite
researching.
thing ever?
Yes, yeah, it's my most favorite concept about the game, which I didn't know until I was like, so I started by thinking like, okay, we're gonna do dragons, and then I started thinking about like, well, why do dragons like they exist, right? They exist in the
Mhm.
world of your fantasy realm. How come all the people are still alive? You know, obviously there's adventurers with magic weapons, but like that takes time. So I was just like interested to see if there was any kind of justification with how, and there's not just red dragons. There's so many different kinds, and there's so many different kinds of dragons that just want to eat people. Like red dragons love humanoids just to eat them
Yep.
for fun.
They taste good.
Yeah, and they take dominion. Like, why isn't every kingdom either destroyed or ruled by a dragon? You know.
Mhm.
So I kind of went down another rabbit hole, kind of researching that, and I found something really interesting. It explained it like there are tigers that live in the world in real life, and people get eaten by tigers, like, or attacked by tigers, killed by tigers every year, right? So we kind of just know like, okay, don't live in the jungle, you know, or
Yeah.
we have an understanding of like how to do our best to avoid not getting eaten by tigers. With dragons, it's a little bit more intense, right? Because they'll take down entire like civilizations,
Yeah.
and that's when I found my most favorite like little piece of like tidbit, and it started by explaining that dragons make people who make dungeons. So they basically what that means is like if you know there's a dragon that sleeps in the mountain, and they only come and destroy the town every 10 years. It's a force of nature. How do you protect yourself from that? Well, you make a dungeon. You make a fortified cellar. You make somewhere where the dragon can't fit or get to. And the reason it's my most favorite thing is because now Dungeons and Dragons make sense, because that's why there's so many fucking dungeons, because people have been trying to avoid the armies of dragons throughout the thousands and thousands of years. And I just
Yeah.
think that's so fun, like a justification for dungeons in D&D. Like there's forgotten passages and giant strongholds deep within mountains and things like that, because civilizations would have to retreat when the dragons came to feast.
That's
That makes-
crazy.
Makes sense.
So that's why it's my favorite thing is I just love that dragons make people who make dungeons. Like that, for some reason, I was just like, full circle, mind blown.
Right. That's hilarious, actually.
I love it.
Yeah, so I think that was a fun little piece of information. And I was like, I'm glad there's some kind of justification, because I always love that, people take the time to be like, all right, there's not just dragons and somehow adventurers seem to always kill them, because they don't. I'm sure there's been so many total party kills
Oh yeah.
from dragons, even
Yeah.
with your 18 levels and magic weapons. Like 96 damage in one attack is a lot of fucking damage, and that's just the red dragons. So that's fun.
Yeah, and can like, can we dish out that kind of damage? Probably not in one attack, you know?
Yeah,
As of right now.
maybe.
Eventually.
I haven't taken my sorcery points yet. Just you watch. My little Sorcerin. He's gonna be
Just-
dealing out 100 damage in a round eventually, maybe. I'm
One
at
day.
50 right now, and I'm only level 10, so it only makes
Yeah,
sense.
that was huge.
Yeah. I max out, I think, at like 53 or something silly.
I don't know what my max damage I can do is. Actually.
I mean, if I double crit, double smite, it's a lot of damage.
Yeah.
So, do you guys know anything about the Githyanki and the Mind Flare Wars?
I did read a bit about it. It was the deal that I was talking. I mentioned it a little bit earlier. It's one of the few relationships that they have. It was a treaty established. I'm so bad with
I think it was they went to seek the help of dragons and went and talked to Tiamat, and essentially what they did was the leader of the Githyanki took a hostage and they gave them red dragons. So it's kind of like it's typical in like medieval times to like to settle
Political hostages.
yeah, political hostages, and they're not necessarily like in a jail cell. Like they'll foster them and raise their
Yeah.
children to kind of like, we're gonna foster your kid. We're gonna like marry our daughter to one of yours, so that
Yep.
way don't kill her. We won't kill your son, and we'll improve our relationship between the two houses or families or
Yeah.
whatever.
And it usually starts by force or conquering, but it it only ever happens as like, you're my political hostage because somebody wants something better from the relationship. Not that they want to like wipe you out, but they
that.
want to work more together in peace and harmony, and like raising your sons or daughters in their possession as like their sons and daughters, like goes a long way into being like, yeah, please don't attack me because I'm treating your son or daughter like you would,
Yeah,
And
Which-
vice versa.
which is
Mhm.
kind of fucked up, but makes sense in a world where
I mean, but
It's
that's the
necessary.
kind of it. If you're playing the game like that, you know what I mean? Like,
It's
it's
extreme setup, like arranged marriages.
yeah, arranged marriages are part of like that setup no matter what.
Yeah.
But like, when if your family fucks up or loses a war or whatever, you kind of have to do what you got to do,
yeah.
I'm surprised that Red Dragons would allow that though.
I know, right? I was really
Yeah.
surprised. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure what their end goal was, and like it would have to be something through greed, unless it was a straight up command by
Like
Tiamat, just
right.
for
Oh.
Tiamat's greed.
And
But-
would Tiamat like be able to extract that level of like
Obedience.
loyalty? Yeah, obedience, yeah.
The way it was kind of confusing, but the way I read it was like they took the Githyanki's leader and replaced them with a red dragon, so there was literally a red dragon that was as their
Oh.
leader of the Githyanki.
Well, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
then.
so like they are obedient to only Tiamat. Like there's really no other obedience that's happening in Red Dragon culture. And I don't know. I mean, like parts of the D&D say like the Red Dragons worship Tiamat, or bend their will to them, basically. And then there's other things saying that not all of them do, and then there's realms where Tiamat doesn't exist, so the Red Dragons don't. So there's a little bit of like, take it for whatever you want to take it for. But I'm still interested. Like, why? What was the end goal?
I think that there's like two things that could kind of explain it. One, the red dragons that they sent to work with work in these battles, I believe were of young adulthood or younger, because once they reached adulthood, they could keep all of their accumulated wealth from all of the pillaging that they got to do, which was one of the only reasons that they
Makes sense.
stuck around was
There was so much wealth.
yeah, so they got to participate in the raids, and as long as they stayed loyal, they could keep all of the wealth from the raids and like that they've accumulated themselves once they became into adulthood, because they obviously start to get more like dangerous and start to get like minds of their own, like where once you start to get into adulthood, into like ancient dragon territory, like your values just get stronger and stronger as you grow in any creature, I would say. um so I think that might make sense, like maybe the young adults have like they're like, well, I'm not really sure, I know I like greed and I know there's this god that's like giving me the opportunity to like pillage and whatnot, and like
Yeah,
so it might be like a little bit more along the lines. Yeah,
of
it
like
just
conquest
yeah, like
versus
a
like
bit of conquest and then a bit of like they don't have a mind of their own, as far as like I don't conform to your religion, mom.
yeah.
Like
It might be
you
it might be a little bit of like the red dragons not being strong enough to take um their own realm, like their own kingdom.
I was just reading that and it seems like they were doing it for like growing purposes, the
Mm,
dragon. Because like the the Githyanki needed young dragons, and I'm sure that's because they needed like ferocious, but like you said, Melina, easily trained. And I mean that in a respectful way, because I'm sure the Red Dragon allowed every bit of training.
yeah,
But like
they're blooded through
they're
battle.
small, yeah, they're small, and so like you were saying, they can't really defend a horde in, on the top of a mountain yet. But like through battle and like constant exercise, they were able to like grow their horde and their body.
Yeah, and that tracks, I think, with the red dragons specifically because they need to
Hmm.
prove their strength.
Yeah, and yeah, they're just as much about how big their horde is how big their like physical body is, and like would be able to show like how easily it could be for them to kill you.
And for those who have no idea what we're talking about, the Githyanki is like a race of people and on a different plane. They're astral raiders that are fighting the mind flayers, kind of like just all the time. Which I found out there was some lore that dropped like 2 or 3 years ago that said that the Githyanki are mutated humanoids. Sorry, mutated humans. Like that's official D&D lore. So like the mind flayers enslaved the humans and like twisted them and contorted them until you have the Githyanki that we see today, and that the mind flayers actually killed the human god. So that's a big deal. Found that out. Also, I was like, while you were saying that, I was kind of thinking maybe that's. I mean, it's probably a campaign setting right there. Is figure out like why the red dragons are helping the Githyanki, maybe because of some kind of like stuff behind the scenes that we don't see, because Tiamat's trying to avenge the god of humans or something, or take its place.
Yeah, because
or
I thought
something.
Tiamat was bad.
Yeah, Tiamat is bad, but people have motivations that, or especially gods, they have motivations that don't make sense sometimes.
That's true. The play could be like eons down the road for
Yeah,
us to never even understand.
yeah, and the dragons are the epitome of the long life perspective.
Hmm.
They do things for reasons that don't make sense and never will to someone with 100-year lifespan.
Yeah.
So,
What's 100 years but a blink?
yeah, just I'll go fight alongside of some spaceships for 100 years and come right back.
That sounds cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Okay, well, we are getting close to waking this dragon up, so we better hurry and finish our conversation. We're gonna skip over all the prompt questions because we have to.
There's a lot of information.
Yeah,
in
it's
dragons.
a lot of information, especially covering metallic, chromatic, all the different variations and stuff like that.
This will not be the last time we talk about dragons.
No,
Nope.
and if you want us to go down the list of all the different dragons, make sure you reach out to us at the contact information that I'm sure is in the mid roll. Yeah, I guess I'll just say in general, is there any questions or not questions, but is there anything you liked about the dragons that you've seen in media, red dragons, or is there something you would do with them in a role-playing game, or now that we've researched that, is there just kind of in general, I love to ask what you would do with them. How would you kill with them, or what your perspective is on them now versus beforehand?
I saw a picture of a it looked like just purely based on the image. It looked like a dragonborn rogue type creature with as a red dragon rider, but in an evil campaign setting or in a chaotic campaign setting. That could be really cool.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
I'll say that something I didn't realize was the extent of their greed. I know that they are the greediest and that they raise hordes and blah blah blah, but their greed for strength was interesting to me, and I really want to explore, kind of dig the vein of them having to prove their strength to other red dragons. So maybe being in the middle of a red dragon conflict where one has shown weakness and now the townsfolk of the local area are in turmoil because there's all these red dragons that are coming to fight each other, and you're just in the middle of a red dragon basically land conflict because everyone's trying to claim it. Or maybe all the red dragons are trying to peacock for a female red dragon, and all the townsfolk are like, what the fuck, all these red dragons keep trying to court this female that lives in the mountains that's been sleeping for 100 years. That'd be scary and a lot of fighting and a lot of fun.
Yeah. It'd be interesting if, as long as the village, city, or whatever was just far enough away. Because I feel like when you put a city inside, sure, you get one dragon, and that it's it's a lot, but it's hey, maybe we'll survive this if we all really, really try. But you throw 2 dragons into the mix, I feel like it's just a peasant. You're
nope, I'm dead.
I'm not even fucking trying.
Unless you've built a dungeon.
Unless you've built a dungeon.
That is so freaking hilarious, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Outside of that, I think what I found most interesting is that they prefer to fight on the ground.
Yeah.
That they're so big that they can fly, and that they do fly when they need to, but if it's fighting, that they prefer to use their bulk and their speed on the ground, because they are quite fast when they're using their arms and legs.
Sure.
That would track.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. The barbarian red dragon. I'm going to fight you fist to fist, claw to fist.
Yep, and it would do that because of pride more than anything else, it probably knows its limitations, but it would never say that.
Yeah. It's like the warrior making fun of the the archer.
Yeah.
You use a coward's weapon.
You have to be far away from the fight. I am right in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm pretty sure. Oh, yep, those are kobolds popping up, and they're red.
Oh, we gotta
beefy
go.
kobolds. Oh, the dragon's waking up. All right. We'll make some dexterity saving throws, and you'll have to find out next time if we passed or failed. That's gonna do it for us today. I'm Dylan.
I'm Melina.
And I'm Alex.
And we'll see you next week.
Bye.